am going to try to share my screen here and try to still get comments. Let me see if I hit play. Okay, I don't know if I can see. Oh, wait, chat. Oh, there's my chat. Okay, just in case, if you guys have like questions or something, throw them in the chat anytime. I don't really care. This is super casual. I'm just gonna go through, gonna give you guys a little bit. Oh, good. Look, we can see your screen. That was my hope. I want to give you guys a little bit of background of who I am and why I'm here, and then just kind of go through. I am a landscape photographer, so I want to give you guys some, really go through some quick basics about landscape photography, what I do, my kind of approach to things. And I'm not going to go really in depth on any particular technique or subject, but kind of try to give you guys an overview so that if you do have more questions, you know, you'll have something to explore. So anyway, my background, my name is Mandy Lee. I grew up in Colorado, but I worked at Precision Camera, which I know most of y'all who are here. I worked there for about 10 years, and I worked in the photo lab and also in their like kind of education learning department for a while, and absolutely loved it. And as much as I loved Austin, I won't lie, Texas wasn't my favorite state of all, mostly because, as you guys know, the summer is ridiculously hot and I couldn't handle it. So anyway, I kind of was doing the whole 9-to-5 job thing at Precision, and I was also the house photographer at the Paramount Theater down there on Congress. Absolutely loved it, but you know, I was getting burnt out, and I bought what you would call a teardrop camper. Let me see if I can get my screen to switch here. Yeah. There we go. A little teardrop camper. And I mainly bought it to kind of go out and explore as a means to get out and get away from life and people. And the more and more I did this, the more and more I realized that that was the only thing that made me happy, and that I just wasn't happy, I don't know, living the traditional 9-to-5, going to work, doing my job. And so I decided I had to do this for my own sanity. And I decided to move full time into this little tag teardrop trailer, which you can see there is, it was, I mean, literally you open the door and it's like a bed inside. So anyway, I quit my job, gave away all my things. And this was over 5 years ago now, about 5.5 years ago, before it was like the cool thing to do. I'm the hipster of teardrop travelers. And it made me very happy. And so I hit the road planning to teach landscape workshops.
Oh, you're on it?
What's that? Oh, I missed that.
Can you talk to her?
Anyway, yeah, I can hear y'all if you talk. So I started doing these landscape photography workshops. Didn't really have a huge plan, but I just figured if it was going to work, it was going to work. About a year later, I met this boy named Kendrick. He was living in his Tacoma. That's his house right there. He wasn't homeless. He had a job, but he had the same ideals as me, trying to live life, work, contribute to society, but still have fun and enjoy living. So we moved in together. We moved from Phoenix, the one with the little orange stripes, into what we named Rocky, the camper there with the black camper. And it was another teardrop shaped trailer, but this one had a kitchen on the inside and a bathroom, which we never used. But it was pretty amazing. We lived in Rocky for 2 years. This is Rocky next to a Jeep Cherokee, so you can get kind of an idea of the scale of our little home. This is out in Big Bend when we upgraded to our Tacoma. And then after we upgraded to our Tacoma, we upgraded to our current home, which I'm currently sitting in, which we named Little Bear. It's called a Tab 400. It has a bed and a table, which I'm sitting at, and a kitchen and a bathroom, which we still don't use. So living without a bathroom for 5.5 years. That's like a thing. Air conditioning, yes, we do have air conditioning. Only when we're plugged into shore power, though. Our generator is not strong enough to run our AC. But we have solar, which runs our lights and charges my laptop so I can work and all that fun stuff. So, yeah, we pretty much love it. But the reason I like to introduce and start with this is because I feel like the lifestyle we lead really lends a lot to my photography. It's what got me out of when I lived in Austin. I was photographing weddings and headshots and working at the Paramount, which is, live events. And that sort of photography to me, while I enjoyed it, it was very, very go, 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 rush, 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 get the moment, get the shot. And as soon as I started landscape photography, it was just this like thing in me that it was slow and it was for me. And every photo I took had a memory with it that wasn't stressful. And it was the most amazing thing. And that is part of what made me want to do. I mean, what I'm doing, it made me push so hard to pursue this. And so I think it's really important to start with that part of my story because that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. And, it's not the richest lifestyle, but it is definitely the happiest lifestyle for me. So anyway, I wanted to start with that. So getting into, landscape photography. I don't know how many of you are portrait photographers or whatever other types of photographers, events, wildlife. But living on the road, I've got to be super careful about the equipment I have. I can't bring a whole studio with me. I can't bring a lot of lighting, although I do actually have one ProPhoto light, but that's it. And so the most important things to me as a landscape photographer, I'm going to show all these on the screen really quick. My camera, obviously. I shoot with Nikon just simply because I've shot with Nikon my whole life. But I think every brand has an amazing camera. And obviously, if you're a good photographer, it doesn't matter what brand you shoot. So I have a 850, a Z6, and a Z7. I always carry a tripod. In fact, I think I have about 5 tripods with me. Extra memory cards, extra batteries, lenses. I probably have about, I don't know, 8 lenses with me, but my trifecta of lenses are my wide angle, 14 to 24, my 24 to 70, which I've had for like 15 years and is still my favorite lens, and my telephoto 70 to 200. I have 200 to 500. I have a macro. I have other lenses, but if I could only carry 3 lenses with me, those would probably be the 3 I would carry with me. Filters, super important for landscape. I always carry my circular polarizers and a whole set of neutral density filters. Lens cloths, lens cleaning. And since I've gotten my mirrorless cameras, my Z6 and Z7, I have taken to cleaning my own sensors on those. So I clean those sensors and I carry that stuff with me, although I still don't do it on my 850 because I don't want to ruin it. So I leave that to people at Precision. I take it in and just have them do it because, that's safer. My hood loops, my, oh yes, my platypod. I've got a little platypod I really love for that low angle stuff. You can throw a tripod head on there. Intervalometer for long exposure and nighttime stuff, and rain covers. So those things always come with me, even in my limited little truck space that I have. Tripod, you guys probably don't really need this slide, but when I do my workshops, so many people wonder why I'm so insistent that they bring a tripod. And obviously you all know, the logistics of having a tripod. Obviously for your camera settings, it holds it still. You can have a longer shutter speed, anything long exposure you need it on. If you're doing HDR photography, if you're doing focus stacking, anything along those lines, you need a tripod, just logistically. The other reason, though, I really love to have a tripod is because I think that's what separates, in landscape photography especially, a tourist from a photographer. If you're a tourist, you're going to pull up to the scenic overlook, you're going to jump out of your car, and you're going to take a picture from the first spot you can. But if you're a photographer, you're going to pull out your tripod and you're going to take the time, because like tripods are super annoying, right? So you're not just going to set it up just anywhere. You're going to go through the hassle of setting up your tripod. You're really going to think about where you're setting it up and what your composition looks like. So the tripod, to me, aside from the practical reasons of having a tripod, it slows you down and it makes you stop and it makes you think. And I would say 99% of my landscape images are with the tripod. That's not to say I won't shoot without one. If I'm hiking or it's very bright and I just want to get out and be creative and think outside the box. But I definitely like the mind space that a tripod puts me in. It makes me stop and really take in my surroundings before I decide where that's going to go. So anyway, that's my tripod spiel. General settings, I know you all are photographers, so I'm not going to really go over this with you. But the one thing I will point out in landscape photography, if you guys are mostly event or live or portrait photographers, you're shooting people, landscape photography is very different. You have some abilities that you don't necessarily have with portrait photography, where you're trying to get the nice bokeh and you've got shutter speeds you have to deal with because people move. I really, really enjoy being able to have these long exposures because I'm not worried about, my model moving or my subject moving, unless of course it's windy out or whatever. But your brain goes to a different place. Typically, instead of looking at that really shallow aperture that you look for in portrait photography, you're looking for a really deep depth of field. And you're allowed to do that with a longer shutter speed because you can usually be on a tripod. Usually your subject's really still. So it puts you in a totally different mind frame for thinking about your exposure triangle, and which item is your priority. So for me, when I was shooting live, it was always shutter speed and aperture, right? Like you want to get it quick enough to freeze motion, get a sharp picture, and you want to have a really nice blurry aperture going on. But in landscape photography, it's just totally different. So if you're out there looking to get into landscape or macro, I don't know, that's just one thing to kind of think about. So general settings, the great thing is things we might sacrifice in, say, a sunset or sunrise are going to be totally different than in normal portraiture. Our aperture is probably going to be a lot deeper. We're usually looking around 11, 16, maybe even 22, depending on what lens you have, which is totally not what you would do shooting people. Our shutter speed, we have complete control if we want it to be slow or fast to adjust that. And we have a lot more variety that we can play with than we normally do. Sunrise and sunset can be really tough. And people always ask me, how do I get the pictures I get? And I won't lie, it's, I totally take high dynamic range, which is HDR images, often at sunrise and sunset, not usually during the day. And it's not something I want to go super far into as far as how to do it, but for those of you who are kind of getting into landscape photography, I do think this is a really important tool to learn. So a lot of cameras will do auto bracketing. Actually, almost all of them these days will do auto bracketing. And what that is where you get to set your exposure, and then your camera will take however much you set under and however much you set over exposed, so that you can later take those images and put them together to create an image that has the entire dynamic range of that scene, which is actually more than what the human eye can really even see. So in this example here, it was just a quick example I pulled up from the Smoky Mountains. My eye probably, I mean, it depends on where you look. If you look at the sky with your eyeballs, your eye is going to see something more like the bottom that's dark, because your eyes and your pupils actually adjust automatically. And if you look at the trees at the bottom, your eyes are going to adjust and show you something more like the top lighter image. But with the photograph, you can't do that. The image can't adjust like your pupils can adjust. And so when you're able to put those three images together, you're able to get something that you couldn't see without your eyes adjusting in that image. So that's something I often do. I really try hard not to go overboard, because a lot of times HDR can be taken to the extreme and can really kind of ruin an image. But it's also, the opinion of the photographer. So here's another example of HDR that I've done, just to show you. This was an image in Colorado I took. That top image shows some detail in the boats and in the shadows, the shadowed part of the trees. And then the darker image gives you the darker sky, and the lighter part of the trees is more detailed. Now, as you'll notice in my finished product, the sky looks quite a bit different, which is another thing that I have taken to doing. I have what I like to call my skybrary, term to be coined, but Photoshop has come out with a really, really, really amazing tool for sky replacement. And totally, it's digital art, absolutely, but it's very much part of my process. And not every day that you're somewhere, you're going to get a beautiful looking sky. Sometimes it's going to be overcast, sometimes it's going to be totally clear. So I have no problem with sky replacement, and Photoshop has made it amazing. They've made it to where you can match lighting tones, you can match color. And they do have a built-in set of skies that they provide you, which is great when you're practicing and trying things out. But certainly I would say if it's an image that you plan to use, then use your own skies, make it your art. And so that's why I've started, my skybrary, my library of skies. Whenever I'm out and I see a beautiful sky, I shoot the sky. And I take pictures just of the sky. I do horizontal, I do vertical, I do it towards the sun, I do it away from the sun, so I can get all different lighting effects. And then from the same area, so this sky I've replaced is a different sky that I have shot as well in Colorado. So I feel like that piece of art and that final piece of art really, truly is mine. And as you can see too, it really does amazing in reflections. You can rotate your picture and replace the sky a second time with your image rotated, and it will replace the sky in your reflection too. So it's pretty amazing tool. I'm excited about it. I won't go really too far into it. I haven't done it a whole lot, but it is something to think about in landscape photography, because especially if you're traveling and you don't live full-time like me, you may not always have the opportunity to go back to a place over and over and over. You might just have to live with what you have. So anyway, talking about focus in landscape photography is another really tough tool, right? This is something, it's not so obvious. We don't have a person where you're, focusing on their eyeball or whatever. Where do you focus in a landscape photography shot? So my thought is there's 3 ways to determine the best point to focus, which is considered your hyperfocal distance. So I'm going to show you this other chart here real quick, and then I'll come back. When we're shooting, obviously, you're going to have some point in focus and some point out of focus. If you focus too close to yourself, like at the beginning, your foreground will be in focus, your background will be out of focus, and vice versa. You focus on the background, your foreground's out of focus. So there's a point in the middle. I don't know why this chart says 2.6 meters, but it does, which has nothing to do with anything. But there's a point in the middle that is going to give you your maximum focus of your foreground all the way to your background. But determining where that is can be kind of tough. So going back here, the least effective but easiest method for me is to focus 1/3 of the way up your frame. Wherever your frame is, focus 1/3 of the way up. That's approximately close. It's a good rule of thumb for landscape photography that's going to help you find that hyperfocal distance. And this is, you're going to be at an aperture fairly high, probably anywhere between 11 all the way up to 22. You're going to be in that higher end of your focal distance of your aperture. It's not as accurate, but if you're shooting a really big scene and if you don't have anything in your immediate foreground, that's going to be a relatively good guess. If you want to be a little more accurate, you can do the 2x method, which is you look at your frame and you look at the closest thing in your foreground that you want to be in focus. Maybe it's a flower, a plant, a rock. And let's say that object is 6 feet in front of you. You're going to double that distance, so 12 feet, and you're going to focus 12 feet in front of you to get that hyperfocal distance, because that will keep your foreground in focus while maximizing how far out your focus goes. And this is still a little bit generic depending on the lens you have, depending on your focal length, but it's a more accurate rule of thumb than the 1/3 of the way up the frame. And it's pretty easy to do when you're in the field. You can really pretty easily estimate that. Because let's face it, not all of us are going to have all the charts and everything. But if you are OCD like that and you want the most accurate hyperfocal distance, there are charts online. You can literally look up your camera, your lens, the hyperfocal distance for a particular focal length of your lens on your camera, and you can measure it out. But like, to be real, who's going to actually do that? But you can. And to help you do that, there are apps out there which are pretty awesome. One of my favorite apps to do that is Photopills, which is pretty cool. Photopills is an app I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. It does a million things, but one of the million things it does is help you figure out where to focus. And it gives you what they call an augmented reality. So you can choose your lens and you can choose your focal length, and it will tell you, and it'll show you with that little red line exactly where you should be focusing to reach that peak focus distance. And as Bob just said, yes, mirrorless cameras do focus peaking, which will show you what's in focus and what isn't. But what this tool will do will show you how to maximize what's in focus versus just finding what is in focus. This will show you with this lens and this camera, how do I maximize if I want everything in my shot in focus? This is what I have to do. Obviously, you're going to be limited by your lens and your camera and what you're doing. So without getting really technical and detailed, there's also focus stacking, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that's something where you can actually, if your lens and camera is not capable of getting everything you want in focus, you can do what's called focus stacking, which we'll talk to a little bit later. So, oh, and I think the reason I threw this picture in there was just to say that in landscape photography, it's not always about getting everything in focus. A shallow depth of field, bokeh, everything in nature and landscape photography is still absolutely amazing. So that's only in some situations. In a case like this, I thought, you know what, I wanted a really shallow depth of field. I just wanted the foreground of these Ocotillo in focus. I wanted them to blur out to the back. And there's definitely a place for that. You don't always have to maximize your focal length. You need to be creative. It's a case by case basis, but so yeah, so I threw that in there. So talking about composition a little bit. Look, I'm drinking out of my Luckenbach mug. I don't know if you guys can all see my video too, but this is my Luckenbach mug just for you guys. Okay, so talking a little about composition, I think I have a lot of number one rules. Which I put, oh, maximize your opportunity. Here's my number one rule today. My number one rule is to take your scene and to do everything you can do with your scene at that time and get creative, because you never know if, you always walk into a scene with a shot in your mind that you want to get. And sometimes that's the shot you get, and that's amazing. But a lot of times that's not the shot you get. So the next 4 images are all from Big Bend, Texas. And it's the same morning from the same location. And it's shot 4 different ways with 4 different lenses over the course of maybe, I don't know, 30 minutes. So this first shot is kind of the grand landscape. And that's what I usually walk into a scene thinking, is I usually walk into my landscape scene just the way my brain works, thinking about getting the grand landscape scene, usually shot either with my wide angle or my 24-70. That's usually the lens I start with. I just want to get that big overall amazing view. And this is just before the sun peaks over, when it's that colorful moment of sunrise. And, I'm happy with it. I like it. This is what I had in my head. This next shot, I decided this is still pre-sunrise. Actually, this one might have been, this is before the last shot. The sun was a little bit lower. The clouds weren't quite so bright yet. This is actually shot with my 70 to 200 millimeter lens. And the reason I really liked this, it's about maybe 8 images of a Pano stitched together. But based on, I guess, my experience there, I know this is Big Bend, Texas. I can tell by the mule's ears there in the mountains. I can tell by the layers of Big Bend, and that just, it screams to me Big Bend. So when I'm looking at landscape photography, I'm trying to look at characteristics that really define the location I'm in. And to me, Big Bend National Park is all about those layers, because you can see them anywhere in the park. And then there's very unique characteristic ones like the mule's ears there. It looks like the bat symbol or something down there. So I pulled out my 7200 and I got that shot. And then I got this, my wide angle with the 24-70 when the sky was bright and brilliant. And then as the sun was coming up, I thought, what else can I do? And I pulled out my 200 to 500 millimeter lens. And pay no attention to your light meter, because when you're shooting the sun, your light meter is going to go insane. And I made it super, super, super dark so that I could get the outline of the sun coming up over one of the layers of the mountains. And then this is actually Kendrick's shot, but he was standing right there next to me. This is after the sun has kind of risen a little bit. We've lost the pink in the sky, literally turned 90 degrees to our right, and it's lighting up the rock face right next to us. And we happen to have an amazing sky that day, but those 4 shots coming out of, I don't know, 20 minutes of shooting, to me, it was really cool because they're all so unique and so different. And it's because we were using different lenses, looking different directions. And over the course of 20 minutes, the lighting changes so much that you've just, got to be on it. But I really, really enjoyed that. Really simple thoughts. Whenever we're out teaching workshops, one of the funniest things to me is I'll watch our students shoot, and they'll shoot all day for 6 or 7 hours, and they'll never take a single vertical shot. Or Vice versa, I've been seeing a lot now that phones have been coming out and been a thing. People will only shoot vertically now and never shoot horizontally. So I just encourage people, especially with landscape photography, where you're sitting in one spot for maybe 30 minutes or an hour, and you're taking 100 pictures of the same thing. And then you're going to get home, and then you're going to have 100 pictures, and you're trying to decide which minute detail is different than the other minute detail, and you can't even decide between them. So I would encourage you to take a few shots and change something. Change your lens, change your camera orientation, move, like physically move where you're standing, change what's in your foreground, but don't go home with 400 images that are like basically the same thing. So anyway, here's a sunrise that I guess I shot this one, and then Kendrick saw it vertically the same morning. And then he threw on a telephoto lens and he saw just the river with the pink reflection. And while he was seeing this, I'm seeing a black and white vertical, really artistic kind of abstract sort of thing. And so again, in that one morning, we got all these different shots because we're thinking differently. We're thinking different lenses. We're thinking different compositions. When I took the shot, I was thinking black and white. This is going to be black and white. I know it. So try to challenge yourself to use different lenses all the time and not stand in the same spot all day long. This is another one of my favorite examples. The next two images are two of my favorite images taken on the same morning in Big Bend. This first one was shot, I want to say I was probably using my 24-70. I can't remember. I think it was my 24-70, but it's a probably 5 or 6 shot Pano at sunrise. And I love this shot. And I knew when I did the Pano, I knew it was going to be great. I knew it was going to be exactly what I wanted. So I shot it, but then what do? Do I stand around and retake it 10 more times? Or do I try to get creative? So after I got this and I knew I got my shot, I started to move around and I saw this little, I don't know, I think they call them a sodal plant, but it's kind of like a little agave. And I got this shot, which I ended up really loving. And it was a total afterthought. It was a complete just what reminds me of Texas, what's going to remind me of this area. And that's what it was. So just by moving around, getting low, getting in awkward positions where you might fall off a cliff, you know, it mixed it up and I really, really loved it. So, all right, what do I have next? We're going into water. Woo! Maguey. What's maguey, Evelyn? I have no idea. Anyway, I'm just reading y'all's comments. Okay. So water is one of my favorite subjects, which there is far too little of in Texas. Again, another one of the reasons I left Texas is because there weren't enough waterfalls. So when it comes to composition and water, I always like to tell people to follow the water. Make sure you get the point where the waterfall is coming in and the point where the waterfall's leaving. Because if you miss either one of those, if you chop the top off, it's like really confusing to your brain to see a waterfall picture without the top. But same thing goes for the bottom of the waterfall. If your eye and brain doesn't get to visually see where that water's leading to, it can be a little confusing. So I love waters. I love waterfalls. They're my favorite compositions. And this is a good example of it. This was, I shot last year in Colorado. I walked up to this waterfall. This is in the summer when there's wildflowers, and I saw these flowers and I was like, oh man, that's a great foreground. I love that. Here's my waterfall shot. And I love it. I love this shot. It's great. But after I got the shot, it was like, okay, well, I only need one of those. I don't need a million. What do I do next? So I change my lens and I step back. And the next shot I take of this waterfall is this. It's a 3-image pano taken with a pretty wide angle lens. And you can tell like it's very wide angle, but it gives this same exact waterfall such a different feel because I stepped 5 feet back and I changed my lens and I got this entirely different feel. You get the water coming in from the right, it bends around, you see where it's going, and it just makes the whole scene feel so much bigger. And your focus is no longer wildflowers, which it was in that first one, and it's now on the water. So really defining your subject. This is another thing I love to harp on our workshop students about is what are you taking a picture of? I don't just want to see a picture of, oh, this is a pretty spot. You know, it was pretty, so I took my camera out. I want to know what your subject is. So in this picture, my subject is clearly these pretty wildflowers leading into this waterfall. That's what it is. It's the way the wildflowers are in front of the fall. In this picture, my subject is this giant roaring river leading through a scene. And just knowing what you're taking a picture of and being really intentional with what you're shooting is going to help you with your composition so much. Because if I walk up to you and I say, hey, what are you taking a picture of? And you just say, oh, it's pretty out. I mean, that's no guidance into how you should be composing your image. So anyway, going back to water though, I'll get back to the subject thing in a little bit. But capturing water obviously is all controlled by your shutter speed. So if you have a very quick shutter speed, you're going to get something on the left where you freeze the water, and then you've got these in betweens until you get something with a much longer shutter speed, which is going to really smooth out your water. Is there a right or a wrong? I would say no. There is no right or wrong. I am not one to judge other people's art. You can decide what you like. My goal as an instructor is to teach you how to get what you want. So if you want the image on the left or you want the image on the right or something in between, I want to make sure you know how you can get that. I tend to be a little bit on the not far right, but maybe the third picture. I don't know. I like some smooth water. Sometimes it's called smooth, cotton candy, whatever. I've heard all kinds of weird terms for it. I like to see that water because the image on the left that's frozen, our eyes, when we're looking at a waterfall, they don't see it like that. Our eyes, when we're looking at a waterfall, don't freeze the water like that. So when I'm looking at a picture of water, I don't typically like to see it frozen like that. I like to see it a little smoother, which I think mimics the way my eyes actually experience the waterfall. It experiences it over the course of time. So just, oh yes, crunchy or smooth peanut butter. I like it a little smooth, personally. Some people like crunchy. Good analogy. But basically, I want to make sure everybody understands how to get it by adjusting their shutter speed. And most of the time, depending on the environment, situation, lighting, you're going to have to use a filter to achieve that. So my two favorite filters for water are circular polarizers and neutral density filters. The circular polarizer is the best in getting rid of reflections and really bringing in a richness of color and making your water stand out. So this is a complete straight out of camera, non-edited picture with no circular polarizer. The next image is a complete straight out of camera, non-edited, simply turning the polarizer to the proper 90 degrees to where it's affecting it. And you'll notice on the rocks and the trees, the reflection goes away, which gives it a much more vibrant look. So going back, and that's literally exact settings, doing nothing but turning my polarizing filter. So you can see the water and the rocks all become darker, which brings out the water. And then also the sky reflects on the leaves, which in this next picture, you can really see. So yes, our rocks are going to get darker. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of reflection there, but check out, you don't realize how much of the sky is being reflected onto the green leaves. And when you use that polarizer, look how much greener those leaves get just by turning the polarizer and doing nothing else. So that's like number one for me in my bag. And then the neutral density filters are there in case I need to slow that water down more. If I get a really sunny day, I just need a longer exposure. The neutral density is just like putting a sunglasses on your camera. That's the way I like to think of it. So those will help slow it down if it's just too bright out and you can't get that long exposure. Cleaning the scene. And this is a great topic I love to talk about. It's so interesting when you're in the field and you're totally in the moment and you're just thinking about getting the shot and getting in the right spot and getting the right camera settings and setting up your tripod. And there's a million things going through your head, but you don't think about, oh my gosh, look at this dead leaf or this dead branch or whatever. And just like you might pose a person for a portrait, or you might set a scene, you know, for a portrait, I feel like you can totally set your nature scene too. You know, the only rules that apply are don't pick anything live, don't destroy any living plant. But if it's dead, if you've got a dead branch and dead leaves and dead this and dead that, moving it in person is going to save you hours in Photoshop. So anyway, I took this shot a few years ago and realized there was this big old dead branch hanging out the side. And then when I finally went and moved it, I got this shot. I decided to go vertical with it, but it's that same branch along that rock saved me probably an hour in Photoshop just by walking over and moving that branch. So looking at things, and to be fair, I don't have an example of this, but there have been a lot of, say, fall color shots where I've put a bright orange leaf in the foreground of my image, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're simply setting your scene just like you would do a model's hair, you know? So really pay attention to little things like that. What if it just has an accident? What if it just has an accident? What's that mean? Asking for a friend. Okay, well, ask your friend what that question means for the accident. But I would like for people to look at their landscape images with the most intentional purpose possible. And I know we sometimes get happy accidents where you like, oh, hey, I happened to get this really great picture where everything just came together. And that's great, but like we want to do that all on purpose, right? We want things to be intentional. We want, you know, I have this picture of a waterfall with like a red leaf in the foreground. And when people look at that and ask me if I put it there, I say, well, heck yes, I put it there. It's because it's beautiful. And I was paying every attention to every detail in my picture I could be. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So always do an edge check, always check around your image, always look at the little details. If there's a dead branch or a dead this or a dead that, or what piece of color do you mean to be getting in your image? And then when people ask you if you did it on purpose, you say, heck yes, I did it on purpose because I'm awesome. So, okay, next topic, which I was sort of talking about earlier, is in landscape photography, you're not just taking a big, pretty picture of a pretty spot. You're not just going to scenic overlooks and jumping out and taking a picture. You always want to know what your subject is, because if you can define your subject, that's going to help you decide exactly how to compose your image. Do I need to be low for this subject? Do I need to be high for this subject? What is the best lens to be using for this subject? And everything you do needs to be intentful. So this particular image, was, again, I put in a lot of Big Bend images just for you guys because it's Texas. And this was the day after one of those crazy West Texas windstorms. It was so windy the day before. It blew up all the dust and you could barely see them. I mean, you could barely see the mountains a mile away. It was so dusty and cloudy. But we went out for sunrise and there were no clouds. There was just like haze in the air. And so I was like, all right, well, the outline of that mountain's still kind of cool. Whatever, I'll shoot this. And, like I said before, I always start with my 2470, get the scene, kind of look at it. I was like, all right, well, that's kind of pretty. I like the haze and I like the outline of the mountains. But, it wasn't really calling me because, again, I mean, what's my subject? It's just like the mountain. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to throw in my telephoto lens and I'm going to get the sun coming over with the silhouette of this peak. And you can see the silhouette of the Ocotillo in the foreground. And I think, okay, I like this a little better. It's a little more of a subject. At least I know, okay, this is a photo of the sun coming over the cliff. So I'm starting to define my subject, but still like, well, it's all right. I kind of like this. It's neat, but I don't know. It's average to me. So then I think, what else can I do? And I start looking around and I'm like, what is really calling me in this area? And as I look around, I see these beautiful, beautiful white flowers like 10 feet in front of me. And I know that's my thing. So I recompose, I change my lens, all in the course of about 5 minutes. And I think this has got to be my shot. Now I have a subject. Now I have a subject in an area. This is no longer a picture of the dusty storm. This is a picture of the environment and these flowers and these pokey plants in the desert with the sun rising behind it. But if you were to ask me, what's my subject here? I don't know. It's just pretty. What's my subject here? My subject is the desert plant with the sun rising behind it. And it took me some time to get there. And it took me a couple of lens changes to get there. But I finally got there. And that was finally my thought process and how I got to that point. Now, on the subject of focusing, which I promised we would talk a little bit about, but not a lot about, because it could be its own whole hour dialogue, is focus stacking. So like in HDR, where you might bracket an image for exposure, that's where you're taking different exposures and putting them together to create one exposure. Focus stacking is similar, but you have the same exposure. You focus on different areas in the picture, and then you put all those in focus parts together to get an in focus image. So this was a focus stacked image focused on the plant and then several different distances all the way out until I got to the mountains. So if you were to zoom into this image, you would see the flowers, the petals that are maybe 10 feet in front of me are perfectly sharp, and the cliffs in the background are perfectly sharp as well. And that's because I've put those together to do that, all at the same exposure, but different focal distances. So there's Photoshop is able to do that. And there's a lot of third-party programs too that are able to put together focus stacking for you. So I just want the concept to be out there without doing a whole class on it, letting you guys know I've done that. So, but yeah, know your subject. Which, getting to that point, knowing your subject, to me, if you know your subject, a lot of times it means putting it in your foreground. And to put something in your foreground, it doesn't mean just standing where you're comfortable with your tripod up to eye level, because that's the most comfortable thing for you to do. And then, oh, you have this little plant or this little cactus kind of down in front of you. That's not making your subject. That is, oh, and Clay just asked, are all of these with the tripod at 6 feet? I assume you mean in height. No, absolutely not. So, well, this one maybe because the plant was a little below me by chance. But for instance, this one, I am probably 1 foot off the ground. So I've removed the center column from my tripod because that center column is going to limit how low you can go. Not all tripods will allow you to take the center column out, but a lot of them do. And if your tripod does allow you to either remove the center column, or some of them allow you to turn it sideways so you can get lower to the ground, I think that's really key in getting some of these shots with a really interesting foreground, because you need to be maybe a foot or less off the ground. So having a tripod that allows you to do that is really key. So for this shot, again, you're not going to stand up where it's comfortable. You're going to get down, you're going to sit on your butt, get some knee pads, lay on the ground, do what you got to do. But you've got to get close and low to make that item in your foreground really prominent. And you've got to pose it to where it lines up with the background. So in this shot, I had it, lined up with the background. Now here's an example of, yeah, there might be ants or bugs. Hey, I've gotten a lot of injuries for photos. It's worth it though. This is an example of where I did not focus stack, but I did try to have my aperture, I don't know what it was at, maybe 16. It was pretty deep. But even in the shot at f16, because the cactus was so close to me, which I focused on, you can see the cliffs in the background on the horizon. They're semi in focus, but they're not sharp. But that's okay. Like, that doesn't bug me in this image. In this image, I think that's fine because, again, my subject's the cactus. But had I wanted those mountains to be sharp as well as the cactus, I would have had to do some kind of focus stacking to get there. But in this case, I like it. In this case, it doesn't bother me. And I think it just brings your attention onto the cactus. Same with this one. Again, it was a single shot. And so the rows, the flowers on the cactus are sharp and in focus, but the cliff in the background is not perfectly sharp. So, which again, in this shot to me, doesn't bother me. In fact, it might be distracting to me if the cliff was perfectly detailed because it would take your eyes off of the flowers. Now this is an example where I did focus stack. That cactus is literally a foot in front of me. And I did, in fact, I think Megan was up there with me maybe. I definitely got some cactus pokes in my left side that took weeks to go away. But I got really low and really close to this little cactus. And I shot, I want to say I shot about 6 images, starting closest, going further out. So you can see the cliffs in the horizon are sharp. Here's my mistake, which I'm going to go ahead and point out to you guys because this is a learning experience. I was in an awkward position and I was guessing. I focused closest to me, then I moved it a little further, I moved it a little further, I moved it a little further. And I don't think you guys can see my mouse, but you can see in my guessing to get every focal length, I missed a little bit on the tip of the boulder that's closest to me. And the tip of that boulder is actually out of focus. And somehow in none of my 6 images was the tip of the rock in focus. So you've got to be really, really careful when doing your focus stacking and making sure you get every little piece in focus. And so while I do love this image, every time I look at it, all I see is this out of focus, blurry piece of rock. That drives me crazy, but that's life. So looking at rules, photo rules, we all know the rule of third, you know, where you get a third, a third, a third, you crop, do thirds vertically, thirds horizontally, and you try to put your subject in those intersections and you try to split everything by thirds. Well, in landscape photography, I break that rule a lot, particularly with reflections. I love to take a perfect reflection and just cut my frame right in half. So I started doing this a whole lot. And then I realized when I was looking at my images, when I thought I was breaking a rule by cutting the frame in half, I was actually completely following the rule of thirds. Because if you look at a lot of these images, the bottom third is like the sky reflection, the middle third is like the land or the mountains or the trees or whatever. And then the top third is the sky. And I thought, man, I thought I was breaking a rule and here I am following it. But totally okay to break the rules, obviously. Cactus. There's lots of cactus stories and photographers. I feel like we could probably make a whole album of cactus who have harmed photographers or photographer wounds based on cacti. So here's another one where again I thought I was breaking the rule, but it really ended up kind of following the rule, third, a third, a third, even though I thought I was cutting it right in half and being all symmetrical and cool. And then here's one from the Tetons, which is, I think this is probably a 10 image pano, but I don't think this image would have worked any other way besides putting the horizon right in the exact very middle. I just don't see how this would have worked any other way. I shot it with my wide angle lens first. And then when I got bored of that, you know, my 2470, like I said, the one I always start with, I got bored of it. And so I threw on my 7200 and zoomed in and did a pano because honestly, the sky was super boring. There was like a few of these little wispy clouds and that was it. And it was a little after sunrise, so it wasn't really colorful or interesting. So when I took this shot, I knew in my mind, this is going to be black and white. I just knew. And again, breaking it the other way, you can take a very slight horizon when you have a beautiful sky and make it a sixth, an eighth of your picture. Negative space, tons of room to do that inside of landscape photography, especially if you get blessed with a great sky. So definitely think inside the box, and then once you get that shot, then step outside the box, you know. Leading lines, I won't spend too long on this, but obviously landscapes are full of patterns, leading lines. Try to think about this when you're shooting the shot, and it's so hard when you're in the moment and you're standing in the place and you're looking in your camera. It's not always easy to look in your scene and purposefully have a line. I always try to have my lines come in from the corners and lead into the shot. And sometimes it's hard to think about when you're in the moment, you know, it's not always the easiest thing. So really being present and aware and slowing down when you're in the moment to think about exactly where you're at. This is a, I may have done HDR, but I did not add the Sunstar. It was part of it. I think it was a multiple exposure as far as getting the dynamic range, though. I think it was probably 3 shots. The wicked blondes of the desert. Oh my gosh. Frank Lloyd Wright. That's crazy. Just another example, again, coming in from the corner, leading into the image, taking you through the image, just being present and aware of these little things, being intentful. You don't want happy accidents. You want happy purposefuls. I don't know, happy on purposes. That's what I'm going to call them. Happy on purposes. Sun stars, though, are a thing, as Clay just brought up. None of these were added after the fact, but sometimes one of my favorite things to do, it's after sunrise, you're in that kind of boring time of day when the sun's up and it's like the lighting's not so interesting. If you have a really super clear sky and there's nothing going on, um, getting purposeful sun stars is awesome and fun. So the wider angle lens you have, the more distinct your little rays are going to be. So I like to take a super wide angle lens, point it straight at the sun, and make that part of my image. It helps if you, the smaller your aperture, the more intense your sun flare is going to be. If you're looking at your light meter, then you're probably going to be underexposing what your light meter thinks is happening because it gets confused when you're looking at the sun. And it's best also on a super clear day. If you have any kind of haze or light cloud over the sun, it's going to diffuse your sun rays and you're not going to get as sharp of a sun ray. But it's a really fun thing to do in the middle of the day on a clear blue sky day. So here's another example of the same thing there. Sun stars are double of the aperture blades on your lens. Yes, absolutely, that makes sense. So I guess I've never gone into count them, but there should be probably about what, 16 or so on there, I would guess, on this lens. This was shot with my 14 to 24 millimeter lens. So probably, yeah, 8 bladed apertures have 16. That's probably what this is. That looks like 16. So yeah, good point, Josh. Cool. Anyway, great thing to do if you're, you know, bored in the middle of the day. And again, working that into both leading lines and a sun star. So I think I just threw that in there for fun. Oh, and then here's one Kendrick took of me because we were super bored and there was no sky. It's my favorite thing to do when there's like no sky. There's absolutely no clouds and you're bored and you're trying to get some kind of creative imaging. It's something fun to play with. You can put it in front of people. You can put it in front of trees. You can put it on the edge of a horizon, flowers. It's just fun to play with for sure. All right, I'm gonna try to get through this. I know it's after 7. So thinking just kind of outside the box, I think I said a few minutes ago, I always start in the box because the box is comfortable. So I start following the rules. I start with the lens I'm most comfortable with, usually my 24 to 70, usually shooting my subject the first way I see it when I walk up. But again, after you get that shot, you don't want 100 of that shot. You've got to think outside the box. So, you know, this is a shot from Colorado. This is a columbine. It's Colorado's state flower. And I walk up and I see this flower and I think, oh, great, it's beautiful. There's a green leaf behind it. And so I'm going to just walk up and take a picture of this flower. I like it. I like this shot. It's pretty, shows detail, shows good lighting, you know, whatever. But I got the shot and I didn't want 100 of them. So then I start moving around the flower and I start thinking, okay, what else can I do? This one, I'm probably 3 feet up from the ground. So I move to the side of it. Now I'm like a foot off the ground, but now you can really see the shape of the flower. And I'm holding a small LED light panel, you know, a bunch of companies make them. You can adjust the power and the lighting. And the sun is shining on the flower from the back, which is great because that's lighting up the purple. It's putting highlights on the purple, but the white part wasn't lit. So I'm holding a light to the front of the flower to light the front of the flower. And I think, man, that's really cool. It's hard to shoot a columbine because they're such a weird shaped flower. They've got these stamens or whatever they are hanging out the back. And it's hard to shoot. So I really enjoyed this image. And then I think, okay, well, I've got that. What can I do next? So I'm holding this little light in my hand and there's some columbines that aren't quite fully budded yet. So then I decide I'm getting super artsy and I hold the light completely behind but pointed at the lens. And I never pick this flower, I never take it into a studio. It's just in the ground. I'm holding the light pointed at my camera behind it. And it's neat. I don't know. Am I ever going to hang it on the wall? Probably not. But is it cool? Yeah. So, I mean, these 3 shots are from the same moment, and just totally getting around, thinking differently, doing different things. So when I get home, I have a set of totally unique images. So start thinking behind outside of the box. The other thing that often happens in landscape photography is something I haven't figured out how to do yet, which is control the weather. So if any of you have figured that out, please let me know. We went out to shoot sunrise again in Big Bend, and we get our butts up at 4 a.m. in the morning, and we get out and it's 32 degrees, even in Texas. This happens, I'm not lying. And it's raining and you can't see 20 feet in front of you. But we're there and we're with a group of people, so we have to get creative. So this is a shot from that morning in the complete fog. And then when I edited the image, I shot it as a kind of a silhouette. When I edited it, I added the sepia tone to it because I don't know, I thought it looked cool. It was just part of my own artistic process. But being able to be in a moment when things aren't ideal, you know, the situation isn't always what you want. This is from the same morning in Big Bend. It was rainy and misty, and I couldn't see 20 feet in front of me, but man, I could see the spider web. And so lining it up to where I had a dark background with the spider web, that's another shot from that same morning. Yeah, I think Carl was there, right? Were you there, Carl? And then this is a opposite problem you sometimes have. Middle of the day, it's bright, there's no sky, there's nothing interesting, but there's these candelia plants all over Big Bend. And Kendrick actually shot this, and he just thought abstract, black and white, what can I do? It's the middle of the day and nothing's cool is going on. So Verlon, I have the same power as you. It's always bad if I'm there. And then this shot, the reason I threw this in there is because we did a workshop that was supposed to be for spring bluebonnets in Texas, which, as you all know, wasn't really a thing this year in April when it always is. And we went out and there were no bluebonnets. There were like a couple of poppies here and there. So I got up close and I took a picture of a poppy, and hey, I'm super happy with the image I got. Even though it's the only shot I got all weekend, there's things to be had, and being happy if you only get one shot from an outing. I mean, that's pretty good. If I get a shot I'm happy with out of every single outing, that's amazing, because a lot of times it's not every single outing. Sometimes I get nothing. So setting your expectations to something also has a lot to do with how you feel about your photography at the end of the day. So last thing I'm going to go through really quick is planning your shot. Again, one of my favorite apps I mentioned earlier is Photopills. It does a lot of stuff. It helps with exposure, it helps with focus, it helps with planning your time of day and knowing where you're going to be and what the sky is going to look like and when, and it's pretty awesome. So I use Photopills to not only figure out a lot of my exposure, but also to figure out when I'm scouting for a workshop, I go to a place and I look and I say, okay, what's it going to look like? Where's the sun going to come up? And this app will help you figure that out. So it'll give you, again, a little augmented reality to show you where the sun is, and you can move it in time. So you know where it's coming from, where it's going, what time it's going to hit, what's the horizon, or if you're, especially if you're in the mountains, sunrise and sunset mean nothing in the mountains because you're in the mountains and sunrise and sunset is usually different because you're in a big valley or hole. You can also line it up with other things, buildings, people, lighthouse, whatever. So it's a really handy app. It helped me find where we were camping here at this lake. I knew where the Milky Way was going to be at what time. I won't say I planned this trip just for the Milky Way, but we were up there camping and I was like, oh, hey, what time is the Milky Way coming out? I figured it out. I set my alarm and I went outside at that time to shoot the picture. I'm not totally crazy. Some people do go do things specific times for specific things, but this helped me at least know when I needed to get up and get out. This was from that same spot. My tent was just over to the left and I knew, okay, this is what time I need to get up to have the Milky Way in front of me. So it's really helpful for that. Yes, Josh, Milky Way. I don't do as much as you do, Josh, but I do it every now and then. Again, same thing with the moon here, getting the reflection. This is in Big Bend. This is this is a focus stacked image, but it's only 2 focuses. So I was able to get the focal point on my the close horizon and then a focus on the moon. Because had I just focused on the rock, the moon would have been in focus, but not sharp. And same thing, had I focused on the moon, it would have been sharp and the foreground would have been like mostly in focus, but not quite sharp. So it's the exact same exposure, the exact same spot, just 2 different focus points. Just more Milky Way, figuring out where it's going to be. And then this last shot, I put last because it kind of brings everything together. This is using Photopills for the Milky Way. It is focus stacking to get my cactus and the hill. And it was 2 different exposures, an exposure for the cactus and an exposure for the background, the sky and the hill. So that's kind of putting everything together. And again, without going into a lot of details about technically how to do everything, just having in your mind that you can do these things and that you can be in an area and have this shot in your head. And yeah, it might take more than 1 shot. Definitely going to take a tripod, definitely going to take some time and thought and patience, but you can do it. And these tools are out there and it's all part of, to me, this is all part of the final piece of art that you're creating, even though of course, this is absolutely not how my eye saw this at that moment, but this is how my mind saw it. And so it's definitely art to me. Anyway, so I just want to talk to you guys. We have some workshops coming up. We've got in September, we're going to do Colorado fall colors. It's super fun. I think one of the unique things about the workshops with Kendrick and I is that we camp during them. So if you like to camp, you're welcome to camp with us. If you want to stay in a hotel, you're welcome to stay in a hotel. And we have a lot of fun, and we usually cook a big meal for everybody over the campfire. We have Colorado Fall Colors in September. In October, we have Big Bend, obviously in Texas, which we love. Then in November, we're doing the Grand Canyon over Thanksgiving. I know it's Thanksgiving, but like, who wants to spend Thanksgiving with their family? So like, we'll have turkey in the bottom of the Grand Canyon, I promise, if you come. And then we do the Smoky Mountains next year. So we'll give $100 off to anybody who wants to do Big Bend or Grand Canyon. And if you want that, just shoot me a message. If you have questions about our workshops, message us anytime. We're super easygoing and I think we have a lot of fun. So let me know if you have any questions about that. I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. Can you see everybody now? Camping with room service. Yep. Mailing list. Yep. We have an email list. And yeah, just message me if you have questions about anything. So I don't know. I don't know who takes it from here.
I can take back over.
Okay.
It's all good. That was great. Thanks so much for sharing, Mandy. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, it was fun. We've been trying to get you for like 2 years now, I think.
Oh gosh, it's like
Or 2 months. I don't know. With COVID, my time is, maybe it was just last week. I don't know.
yeah, who knows?
That's great. So where in the world are you right now?
We are in Colorado right now, camping out. Our next job is there's what they call an Overland Fest. They have 3 of them a year. They have one in Flagstaff, one out east, and one in Colorado. That New Camp, the company who makes these trailers, they're going to be at. So we're working it
Cool.
for them. So yeah.
That's very cool. Does anybody else have any quick questions?
Hi, Mandy. This is Clay. I saw I was first introduced to you when you were on the Texas Park and Wildlife Department TV show on a Saturday morning.
That was a good one.
And that was really great. What was the impact of being on the TV show? And you could maybe add some of your ideas for how to do publicity if you're a photographer.
You know, that was kind of early on in my career on the road. I mean, that was almost 4 years ago. And they still replay it. And I still get people telling me, oh, we just saw you on the show the other day. I think the best thing about that is that even though it was 4 years ago, everything I said in that episode, it was more the ideology of being a photographer on the road, and it all still holds true. So even though it was 4 years ago, I watched that today and I still think, yep, I would say the same thing today. So I love it because of that. But I will say how it came about, because you're kind of asking about the publicity of it. It was a little random. Texas Parks and Wildlife, I was on their email list because I camped in all this, I was on their email list from just camping in the state parks. And they sent out an email that said, do you have an interesting story? Tell us in 2 sentences. And I emailed back and I told them, hey, I'm going to go live on the road and be a photographer and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, great, can we do a story on you? So, I mean, I don't know. It's partly being just putting it out there. And yeah, it was a little luck, I guess, that they picked me. But part of it was I was doing something which at the time, 5 years ago, was very unique. And I know now with COVID and over the last 5 years, living on the road has become more popular. But 5 years ago, it was not. And so I think they got my email and they were like, wow, that's really unique. Not many people are doing that. We're going to do a story on her. So I guess I got a little bit lucky in that regard, but it was at the time something special.
I have a quick question. Do you have a problem with lenses focus breathing as you're focus stacking?
Yeah, I will admit I haven't quite totally fully mastered. Like I showed you in that one image, I was trying to focus stack and I was in this really physically awkward position and like I didn't get it all. And I haven't quite perfected it yet. It's kind of a new technique, it's a new technique to everybody and even to me. That I'm still kind of trying to master. And when I do the auto focus stacking in camera, I don't have as much luck as when I manually focus stack. I don't know. So I've been manually doing it, but I won't lie, I haven't perfected it yet, but it's definitely something I've been enjoying playing with. So.
Cool.
Mandy, this is Laszlo. Did you use tilt shift lenses?
No, I've never used a tilt shift lens. I've played with them, but I've never owned one. I don't know, just kind of never got into it, but they're super fun. I mean, I've seen a lot of images with like the lens babies and stuff, but yeah, I've never really played with them personally. Just a artistic choice.
No, it's not the lens baby, the tilt shift lenses.
The tilt shift lens, yeah. But it has a similar effect, the tilt shift lens with the extreme bokeh.
No, that is increasing the depth of field using the Schwarzschild effect, and then that's in large format cameras. And then the deal is, the other thing is, which I would like to ask, did you think about to eliminate the color fringing on your images?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me on many of my images. It's only been a few images here and there where the color fringing really stands out to me. I guess when I kind of look, there's a lot of different types of photographers, and some think very, very right-brained and technically minded, and like if you zoom into an exact pixel of this or that, does something bother you? And I'm a little more left-brained. I'm a little more practical. What can I do? What looks good to me? What just gives me the feeling I want? And it's very few images where color fringing has ever bothered me. Even though if I zoom in a whole bunch, I can maybe see it. If I print it and put it on my wall, it's beautiful to me and I don't care. So I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's like kind of a cruddy answer to give because it's not being very technical about it, but I'm a more practical, not practical, I don't know the right word for it, but I think about what makes sense for me to do that's going to give me an output that makes me happy. And sometimes worrying about things that I can't notice. Now, at times I will admit, yeah, it's bad enough to where it really does bother me. But most of the time it's fine. If it's bad enough to bother me, I'll go into Photoshop and I'll spend the time to take it out. But I don't know. I know that's a weird answer.
Well, all of the zoom lenses, or most of the zoom lenses, has this effect, unfortunately. Yeah. So you have to be careful. So yes. My point was, did you think about to use a non-fringing direct sun type single lens on your camera?
I mean, now I just use the lens and camera I have, and yeah. If it fringes, it fringes. But like I said, it's never been such a bad issue that has kept me from enjoying my output.
That is true. No, that was not really bothering me. Just I saw the fringing on your images, not all, but a few images, especially those which was very strong backlit images, especially when the sunburst was on it. But you know, I'm not technical. I'm a large format film, so that is.
Well, there's a lot of people too, kind of on the same line, that don't like the. I almost never use my lens hood, which helps to eliminate sun flare and sunspots. But I actually really kind of like that. But Kendrick hates it. So sometimes I'll show Kendrick a picture and he'll say, "Oh, I hate that, all the sunspots and flares." I'm like, I love that. It's kind of a personal thing with some of that. I actually like the effect and he hates it. So I don't know.
Engineers.
Yeah. Engineers.
So Mandy, as the membership secretary for the club, I want to extend to you an honorary membership as we do to all our guest speakers. So for 12 months, you are still a member, and Ed Pete is our he's our webmaster, and he will offer you the full membership, so that if you want to enter our contests, you'll be in the advanced class.
I'll send you the information.
I would love that. Thank you. Again, I feel so great that you all had me, because I know so many of you already from Texas and Precision Camera, and I miss it a lot. So it's so great to just see y'all's faces again.
Well, now you can drop in on a video anytime you feel like it.
Ooh, you're going to be sorry.
Break my heart. There was a question in the chat about high f-stop numbers, large f-stop numbers, and refraction in the image, softening the image.
Right. Yes.
You seem to be addressing that with focus stacking.
Well, yeah. So same thing. So one, focus stacking, if it's an image where I really need that depth of field, I think focus stacking has been my answer. But when I shoot above f11, again, the refraction doesn't bother me, because I guarantee this is kind of a, I don't know, it's your own personal frame of mind and thought. But if I show an image to 99% of the population that I am happy with and I love, not a single one of them is going to say, oh my gosh, look at that lens refraction on that picture. Like really. And so I try to think very practically when I'm shooting and editing my images. Would I rather get a little bit more depth of field and have a tiny bit of lens refraction, or eliminate the refraction but not get the depth of field that I want? And I don't know, I'm just a very practical thinker, and I think most people are not gonna even notice or see or ever be able to tell that there is a tiny bit of color fringe or lens refraction or this or that. So, and that's a personal thing. It's what are you personally willing to put up with? And most right brainers and engineers, I'm just saying it, they're very technical and they will not stand for it. But I think, you know what, I give up one thing, but I get another thing. I get, and it's just where your mind is. And I try to think very practically in my editing and in my shooting and what's going to actually make a great image that the most people are going to enjoy. And I guarantee most people have never even heard of lens refraction or color fringing, let alone do they care when they look at your picture. So
Close enough for real work.
Right. And I know that's not the technical, most technically correct answer. It's not. Technically,
Most of us can't
there's
afford
ways to do it
perfection.
better. But like practically, what are you going to do in the field? Just like they say, the best camera is the camera you have on you, be it your iPhone or your, whatever. The best picture you're going to create is the one you're going to take the time to actually create. And so I try to take a lot of that practicality into my work. I'm a busy girl, I can't perfect every image I shoot.
Well, we all now know what our comment on Mandy's next posted photograph is going to be.
Oh gosh.
Oh, look at that lens refraction. God.
Thanks, Dave.
Oh, part of it too. Once you actually go to print your photos, you're printing on like textured paper. It doesn't even show up, so it's not even that big of a deal.
Exactly.
Here you go harping on printing again.
Printing's huge. And I mean, seriously though,
I'm just picking on Josh.
Print on.
But did y'all see my head nodding when she was like, I just get the shot. That's all that matters. And I'm like, yeah.
I mean, some papers you print on are going to be super sharp and super detailed. And yeah, you might notice if you blow them up to billboard size. But how many of you are printing anything bigger than 16 by 20 on a regular basis?
Nope.
Regular basis. Who's printing?
You got one hand.
Josh. Okay, that makes sense.
He's
but
got
I mean,
printer.
really.
That's why.
And then even then, like, okay, bigger than 24 by 36. And are you printing on something, glossy and high detail, or are you printing on matte, luster, canvas?
Do you know what most billboards DPI is?
Probably very low. 1? No way.
Because your viewing distance is 100 feet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. So actually, the bigger you print, it actually even matters even less because you're not going to view it an inch away. You're going to view it 8 feet away. Mm-hmm. So get the shot. Don't worry about diffraction. Nobody cares.
There you go. Thanks, Josh.
Josh, I wanted to ask, Mark Lasada is not here, competition coordinator, and he was asking for judges from the intermediate and advanced.
It got covered.
It got covered? Okay, great. Just wanted to check.
Yeah.
I bet Mandy would be a great judge.
Sure. I love giving my opinion.
Oh!
I'll give my opinion all day long.
So will Kendrick.
I'm down. Or maybe the next time we do a landscape print show, we know who our guest critiquers are.
Ooh, fun.
Ooh.
Maybe for the interclub contest that Gary could tell us about if he's on the call.
Youre.
Thought I saw him.
He was here. He hopped off.
Okay.
It's all good. We'll have more details.
That'll be in
about it later.
October.
Yeah, we'll talk
October
about
deadline.
We'll talk more about that next month.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody good? We're good. Can everybody big say thanks, Mandy?
Thank you, Mandy.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mandy.
Yes, hands. All right, everybody else, we'll see y'all in about
Trails to you.
2 weeks.
Mandy patrons, thank you for joining us.
2 weeks, we'll see y'all again.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.